Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Sam and I work in tech as an instructional designer, and I'm also the author of the Coding Workbook, Build a Website with HTML and CSS. And in today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit about traditional versus non-traditional or self-publishing. If you've seen my past few videos, you'll know that I've been writing my next book called Create Your Online Course, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about kind of the difference between the traditional and the self-publishing paths that I could take for this book, and kind of talk to you about pros and cons of each, as well as, in the end, I'll share with you which path I'm going to take, whether it's traditional or self-publishing. So to start us off, I'll kind of give you an overview of traditional versus self-publishing. Now, traditional publishing is what I did with my very first book. It's called the Coding Workbook. I wrote a pitch or a proposal for this book and I submitted it to a bunch of different publishing companies, and then once it was picked up by a publishing company, I worked with a team of different editors and marketers and sales to kind of get this thing, from start to finish and launched. For self-publishing, that's really where it's on you, the author, to kind of write, edit, and market and sell your book. And I've done that with this book called Coloring for Coders. I tested it out on Amazon. They have a self-publishing service, and I really liked it because I kind of was in control of everything. And so I'll kind of talk about the big differences between my traditional and my self-publishing experience, and maybe point out some tips that I would suggest with whichever way you decide to go. Okay, so I have my notes here, but I do have three kind of key things that you want to keep in mind when determining whether you're going to go with traditional or self-publishing. And the first is the amount of writing or editing support you're looking for. The second thing is the marketing and distribution support that you're going to be looking for. And lastly, it's the sales and really the monetization and how much you're going to be making. And so I'll kind of break those three things down. So let's start with writing and editing support for traditional versus self-publishing. For traditional publishing, you get professional editing, professional feedback, and that's all great. The one downside or the one con is that sometimes it takes a lot of time of back and forth because, your editors do have more than one book that they're working on, and so most of the time your book is not like their top priority unless there's specific deadlines set by the publisher. For self-publishing, you again are writing everything yourself, just like with traditional publishing, but when it comes to editing, you may need to either self-edit, or you can go onto sites like Fiverr or Upwork to really look for someone more professional to kind of give your book an overview and a little bit of feedback or edit. The nice thing about self-editing or hiring a freelancer is that you can really find people that work within your time frame, and you can find editors that will give you full edits within like a week or a few days, depending on when you need it. Those are kind of the differences between your writing and editing support for going the traditional publishing route versus like the self-publishing route. Now, when it comes to marketing and distribution, let's talk about traditional publishing first. So with traditional publishing, you really do get kind of a bunch of support with marketing and distribution. You have a marketing team. It's not just for your book specifically, but the publishing company does have a team of marketers that can help kind of facilitate the marketing of your book, whether it's creating different content for it, or whether they're, signing you up to speak at different conferences or events. It just depends on your publisher. When it comes to distribution, there's obviously more of a network that can help get your books into shops like Barnes & Noble and, like the smaller bookstores. And so that's kind of one of the things with traditional publishing that they have. One kind of negative or downfall, I guess, for traditional publishing, you kind of have a little bit less control over marketing and distribution. And it depends on your personality type, I guess. But if you want total control, it's there's a little bit less transparency as opposed to self-publishing. For self-publishing, you do have that creative control and freedom for marketing and distribution, but it does require a lot more work on your end. So you can create all of your content for marketing. You can hire people, again, freelancers, to create marketing content where you have like 100% say in everything. So that's one option. The one downside is it is a bit harder when you're self-publishing to get your book into like bigger chain bookstores. But when it comes to getting them into like indie and smaller bookstores, that's kind of like you need to either pitch your book in person or send emails to make sure that you can try to get that in. And so that does require a little bit more time. You can hire like a virtual assistant or something, or like a friend or a sibling to, spend 5 hours a week sending out cold pitches and emails to different bookstores and groups to kind of see if they want to sell your book or pitch yourself to different podcasts and book events. That's just more on you. And so you have total control if you're self-publishing. Could be a pro, could be a con, depending on your personality and how you want to spend your time. So the third thing I'm going to cover is kind of the sales and the royalties, I guess, from traditional versus self-publishing. So with traditional publishing, you get an advance upfront, which is really like a stipend you get because the publishing company wants to buy and sell your book. So your advance is kind of the amount of money that your publisher is going to pay you because they want to buy and sell your book. And so let's use an example of, say you have an advance of $1,000. That means your publishing company is going to give you $1,000 to, buy the rights and sell your book. They'll usually give your advance in thirds. So they'll give you like a third of your advance right when they like agree and you sign the contract. They'll give you a third of the advance when you've submitted half of your book. And then they'll give you like a third of your advance once you've finished writing your book. So in this example, if you have $1,000 advance, you get, $333 up front, $333 halfway through, and $333 once you finish your book. So that's an advance. But now let's talk about royalties. And royalties are the percent that you as the author will get from your book sales. In order to start making money on royalties, your royalties need to recoup the advance that your publishing company gave you. So let's do some math. Let's say that you have a book that you're selling for $10. Now, if you are getting 10% royalties, I need my iPad. Okay, I have my calculator. All right, so let's say that when you sign your contract, you are agreeing to get 10% royalties. That means 10% of your book sales, okay? Okay, so let's say I have a book that I sell for $10 and I get 10% of that. So I get $1 for every book. Okay, I didn't need a calculator for that. So let's say I am getting 10% royalties for my $10 book. And so that means I get $1 for every book I sell. That means that I need to sell 1,000 copies of my book to earn $1,000 in royalties to recoup my $1,000 advance. Now, once I've sold 1,001 copies, that $1 that I've earned above my advance or in addition to my advance then is mine. I start making money. But those first 1,000 copies that I've sold are going towards repaying or recouping my advance that the publisher had given me up front. So that's just something to think about whether you're looking to deal with royalties and advances. I mean, that can be great for some people. Some people might not want to deal with that. And then now we can talk about self-publishing. With self-publishing, what you really are focusing on paying the platform fees for the whatever platform you use to self-publish, and then you're paying yourself. So you can kind of compare royalties between platforms and kind of the fees associated with that. Generally, what I've found is that the royalties for self-publishing is higher, but obviously on the contrasting side, the market and like the amount of effort you need to put into making those sales is significantly higher for self-publishing. Now, I think this could work great if you've already built kind of like a community and you have a group of people that you want to sell your book to. It wouldn't be, nearly as hard as starting from scratch and kind of having to sell to people. But I do think if you have like a community of people you want to sell to, that's great. Self-publishing would probably be your best bet, because then you get that word of mouth traction, and there's a lot less effort up front. So yeah, those are kind of the 3 things I think about. I like to think about, like the writing and editing support. What am I looking for there? I like to think about the marketing and distribution, and like, do I need support there? And like, do I want to do that myself? And finally, I like to think about kind of the money part of it. Do I want to have a wider distribution but get like maybe smaller royalties, or do I want to have to do more of the heavy lifting in terms of distribution and sales myself, but the royalties might be a little bit higher because we're taking out all of the other people that are involved? So those are just things to think about, which leads me to whether I'm traditional or self-publishing my next book called Create Your Online Course. And my choice is I'm going to be self-publishing my next book. It's called Create Your Online Course. Now, the reason for self-publishing, as I mentioned, I didn't need much writing or editing support because I spend my 9 to 5 creating online courses. I know how to do it. I spent the past 5 years doing it. And then for editing, I've done a few passes of editing myself. I'm going to also pass this off to family members and my partner, who I very much trust for things like spelling and grammar, which is like the one thing that I struggle with. And so they can take a look at it from that lens. In terms of marketing and distribution, I've kind of wanted to try myself to kind of figure out if I like this whole marketing and distribution part of it. I get to kind of build my own content and create kind of the whole marketing strategy for it, which is something I kind of want to try for this book. In terms of distribution, I do have a pretty great network of people who want to build online courses. They continue to DM me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, asking like, how do you build an online course? So now I can really just send them the link to this. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I went the self-publishing route. And lastly, when it comes to the pricing and everything, I do like to keep my books relatively inexpensive so that they're accessible to people. But I do think that sometimes it's hard to get the price point as low as you want it when it comes to a traditional publisher. So I do like having the freedom to self-price my books. And also, you kind of get the royalties along with that. And then I'll also be creating an ebook for it. And I'm going to try to figure out how to sell the ebook on my personal website. So I'll create a video about that if you're interested to kind of figure out that process, because I've never done an ebook sale on my personal site. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, if you have any questions about traditional versus self-publishing, feel free to comment them down below. And if you're curious more about writing my next book, well, I kind of already wrote it, but if you're curious about how I wrote and edited this book, then feel free to check out. I'll link the related videos down below. I cover how I wrote it, how I edited this, and then I'll also create like a video in the future on how I'm editing this proof. So this is like the proof of my book, meaning this is not for resale. You can see the sign right there. And so I'll kind of talk about how I'm going to be looking at this and kind of editing it before everything is finalized. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, and I hope you'll have a great rest of your day. Bye.